Welcome to Paranormal Nightshift, your home for everything that goes bump in the dark, and your fan stories told right here. Today's story comes from Veronica, and it is titled The Witch. Now, before we dive into tonight's story, I've got a little something to share with my fellow time travelers. Want to step up your paranormal game? Need more chills, thrills, and unexplained phenomena? Well, you're in luck. By joining the Paranormal Nightshift Patreon, you'll get exclusive early ad-free access to episodes, letting you jump straight into the spooky without any interruptions. As an example, it's kind of like skipping this ad you are listening to right now. But wait, there's more. Our Patreon members get first dibs on our latest ebook series, Paranormal Time Traveler. Follow our time-traveling investigator as they venture back to the creepiest corners of history to uncover listener-inspired mysteries. It's your ticket to an extra dose of the supernatural, inspired by you, our incredible night shifters. New episodes drop every Friday evening, with some surprise releases sprinkled in, so make sure you're tuned in and ready. Visit our Patreon link in the description, or head to patreon.com/paranormalnightshift. Join the Paranormal Nightshift family, where every twist and turn is only the beginning of the journey. All right, let's dive into tonight's story. I've never told anyone this story. To this day, the only people who know what happened are the ones who were there that night. I guess it just felt safer to leave it buried, like we might somehow summon her back if we ever spoke of it. But sometimes the memory slips back in, and I see it all as clearly as that night under the cold Ohio stars. I was in high school, living with my dad in Wheelersburg, Ohio. I'd heard stories since I moved there about a witch from the neighboring town, still in Scioto County. People said she had been found out, discovered doing dark things, and in her desperation, she murdered her 5 children and then killed herself. They buried them all together in a small, neglected cemetery, hidden off a back road. Folks said you could visit the graves of her children, where people would leave toys and stuffed animals, flowers, and offerings meant for kids, while hers remained untouched. Even in death, the community wanted nothing to do with her. They said if you went there, you'd hear her crying, her guilt, her rage. So naturally, my friends and I wanted to check it out. We'd heard the tales in whispers, laughed about them in broad daylight, but now we wanted to know if there was something real behind the ghost stories. We piled into my friend's old car one weekend night, the sky already dark, the air feeling sharp with autumn chill. It took us a while to find the place. We turned down road after road, every stretch looking like the last, and just as we were about to give up, we spotted it. A little gravel road that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was like the road wanted us to get lost first, to earn the right to find this place. We pulled up, the gravel crunching beneath the tires. As soon as we saw the graves, lined up in rows, with little toys and stuffed animals covered in a thin layer of dust and leaves, something shifted in all of us. We stepped out of the car, moving quietly, as if even speaking too loud might draw attention. The graves looked old, the kind you'd think had been forgotten, yet the toys and offerings told another story, a ritual of sorrow that had been repeated for decades. There were 5 small graves for the children, each marked with old headstones, softened by years of rain and weather. Then, at the far end, her grave, unadorned and seemingly untouched. Even from that distance, her grave felt colder, as though it carried its own shadow. One of my friends, in typical idiot fashion, walked over to the stuffed animals and reached out, his fingers brushing against a worn teddy bear resting on one of the children's graves. "Don't touch it!" we all yelled at the same time. I felt it in my bones. This wasn't just about respect. It was like an invisible line, one that we weren't supposed to cross. My friend laughed nervously, hand still outstretched, then froze. A scream split the air, so loud it felt like it was coming from right next to us. It was shrill, raw, filled with something far beyond pain. And after that, the softer, broken cries of a woman echoing out into the night. We didn't wait to hear more. We bolted for the car, scrambling over each other to get inside, barely breathing until all the doors slammed shut. It was then, as we tried to make sense of the shock, that I saw it. My friend, the same idiot who'd reached out to touch the grave, slowly pulled a stuffed bear out from under his shirt. He held it up with a mischievous grin, thinking he was funny, but no one was laughing. "Are you insane?" I spat. "Put it back. We told you not to touch anything." We all yelled at him, voices overlapping, telling him how stupid he was, how he had no right to take it. He tried to play it off as a joke, but he couldn't mask the worry in his eyes. Even he felt it, that sense that he'd messed with something far darker than we'd ever imagined. As we started to pull away from the graveyard, the car shuddered. The engine choked, sputtered, then died completely, plunging us into a silence thicker than the night. I felt the blood drain from my face as my friend tried again and again to start the car, his hands shaking. That's when we saw her. She was standing in the middle of the road, just in front of the car, still and silent, staring right at us. Her figure was shadowed in the dim glow of the headlights, but there was no mistaking her. The woman was dressed in tattered, dark clothes that hung off her like shreds of sorrow. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, yet filled with an intensity that seemed to burn through the glass and into each of us. We couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My friend fumbled with the stuffed bear, muttering, "I'll put it back! I'll put it back!" His voice was choked with panic, the bravado gone. "Do it!" we all yelled, terrified. We screamed at him to throw it out the window, to get rid of it, to get her away from us. Finally, he tossed the bear out the window, his hand shaking so badly he almost dropped it. And as soon as it hit the ground, the car roared back to life. He didn't hesitate. With one hand still on the wheel, he hit the gas, and we tore out of there, gravel spraying behind us, the cemetery and the woman disappearing into the darkness. No one said a word for the rest of the drive. The air in the car was thick, the weight of what we'd seen and felt pressing down on us, filling the silence with unspoken fear. When we finally made it back to my friend's house, we climbed out of the car in silence, each of us looking at the ground, refusing to meet each other's eyes. Without a word, we headed inside, drifting off to separate rooms, too shaken to even acknowledge each other. None of us ever spoke about that night again. We didn't want to, as if saying it aloud might draw her back to us. And even now, when I think of it, I feel a chill, wondering if somewhere out there she's still searching, looking for that bear, looking for us. Remember, if you want to support the show, head on over to our Patreon page. Your contributions help us keep the lights on, the stories flowing, and the time traveler fueled up for his next adventure. But hey, if you can't support us financially, no worries. Just sharing the show with a friend or rating us on your favorite podcast platform goes a long way. And if you've got a spooky story of your own, we'd love to hear it. Share it with us right here on Paranormal Nightshift. You never know, your story might just become the next chapter in the Paranormal Time Traveler series and told here on the show. Until next time, keep your eyes peeled for the unexplained, your ears open for the unheard, and your minds open to the possibilities.